Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Peak Podcast. I am here with my guests today, Meredith and Sarah, who are the owners and head coaches of Fortify Health Coaching. This is a functional health and lifestyle coaching team focused on rewriting the narrative around women's health and really empowering women to feel and function their best. Both Mare and Sarah have several years of experience in the athlete space as well as the functional medicine space. And like many of us, both Mare and Sarah have each gone through their own health struggles, if you will. I feel like that's what gets us all kind of passionate about these things in the first place. Um, welcome both of you. Thank you so much for being here. Very excited about this episode. How are you both doing today?
We're
Good.
doing awesome. We're doing awesome. We're excited to get down and talk about such great topics. And thank you for having us, by the way.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. And I think the viewers are going to love the topics that we're chatting about today. Um, to kind of give some people some insight before we dive in, um, Mare and Sarah are their knowledge just we couldn't even handle a full episode with the level of knowledge they have. So we're going to try to hone in on some specific topics, and we'll probably end up needing to do future episodes to dive in even further. The focus of this episode, I really want to chat about menopause, perimenopause, um, kind of help women better understand these topics, that transitionary period, some misunderstandings or misinformation that they may have around those topics. And if we have some time towards the end, maybe hum some lines about pregnancy and women's health in general. We'll see what we have time for. But to get right into it, kind of our first line of questioning or topics, um, I think we can all agree that there's a lot of confusion around the discussion of menopause and perimenopause. And something that we see a lot at the clinic is the difficulty for patients and sometimes even providers to determine the difference between um, hormone and metabolic dysfunction that may be related to internal issues, and then age related hormone decline, which I guess we could call clinical menopause. Can each of you kind of help describe how we can better determine the differences between those?
Yeah, I'll let you kick it off just because I think this is gonna really tie into like that whole difference between amenorrhea and that whole like adrenal health type of piece versus actual perimenopause.
Yeah. So obviously considering, the age of the person in front of you, it's funny though, like, I mean, my initial thought, like from the way you asked that question is how Mare and I talk to our clients about this topic
Yes.
is, hey, if you are there, if you are like, let's say like around that like 40, year old, kind of age range, it's not the end of the world. Like you are not now sentenced to perimenopause. This is normal. This is to be expected. This is part of the process of being a female human being.
Sure.
And I think in our space, like the functional space, and just like, I mean, we all want to be better. We all want to be our best. Like, hell yeah, at any age. And I think it's scary to like hear a lot of messages around like perimenopause and menopause, and it means, your body's falling apart and this and that, and it's scary and it's confusing for a lot of women. And yeah, so I think that that's how we like to frame the conversation with our clients. Meredith had a great blog post a couple weeks ago. We have a blog over on our website that you guys can check out, but um the title, are we allowed to swear on this episode?
Oh, sure.
Okay,
Have
she
at it.
goes,
I'll be throwing F-bombs
she
every
didn't
now and
spell
then.
it out, but she's like,
Mhm.
am I in peri fucking menopause? And
Yeah.
it like that's like the thought that a lot of women have when they start to feel these shifts. Maybe it's a hot flash or maybe they get some blood work back. This was actually a conversation I was having with a mentee yesterday, looking at her client's labs, who this client is in menopause. It's been over a year since her last period. And looking at her blood work, cholesterol levels are high. We're seeing insulin start to creep up. We're seeing, liver enzymes are high. And it's like, okay, is this related to her lifestyle? Or is this I'm going to say side effect, but is this I guess that's the right term, a side effect of low estrogen? Because we know low hormones is inflammatory.
Sure.
And that's in perimenopause. That's like, Mare kind of started me off like amenorrhea, same kind of idea. Like your body is in this more inflamed state. So, why is that? Is that because of a natural decline to hormone levels as you age? Or is it because of, going back to your first question, something lifestyle wise,
Yeah.
competing, chronic under eating, stress, gut health, whatever it might be, that is contributing to that hormonal decline.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, something we always try to do when we're talking with female patients at the clinic is analyzing the full picture. It's not just one thing, it's their age, their history of dysfunction, maybe their history of oral contraceptives, all these things that could be playing into why they're experiencing symptoms. And maybe that's coming a lot earlier than we would assume. Um, but no, I think that's, you know, really the big focus is, understanding, is this the normal age-related transitions that are happening, or is this perhaps happening sooner because of some um, silent burden or unknown issue that could be driving these factors? And which kind of brings me to my next piece, and I'd love to get your opinions on this. What are ways functional medicine differs from Western medicine in terms of diagnosing and treating both perimenopause and menopause? And I think that kind of goes with our same line of thinking of like understanding, are these symptoms of stress adaptations, or is this age-related hormone decline?
Yeah. So I'm gonna kind of take this about like a couple ways. Is I think one thing that I know that Sarah and I would like for females us to kind of work away with regards to our verbiage is I think that a lot of dialogue comes across that females are broken in some capacity. And so I do think like we're very careful with regards to using, we mentioned this on a recent call with our mentorship group, the word dysfunctional. It comes up very often for females, and that is very fear-based. It's very you did this wrong based. Even going with regards to perimenopause, it's very fear-based. And so I think for us, and just speaking with our clients, it's more so about creating awareness on not necessarily that they are dysfunctional, but things in their life and choices that they made, understanding that the choices that they made are not bad nor good. It was choices they made with the best information that they were provided,
Sure.
and not necessarily provided in talking from a provider perspective, but provided from their peers,
Yeah, society.
provided, by society,
Yeah.
provided by their interactions with their coworkers when they're at work and they're hearing people, talk about this diet or that diet. So we only know what we've learned. We've only know what we've experienced. So that doesn't necessarily make it innately wrong. It just doesn't make it perhaps optimal with regards to where we want to go. And as Sarah said, being an optimal human being, but then our definition of optimal is going to depend on the definition of the person that we are speaking to, our clients, or in your case with regards to the clinic, your patients.
Mhm.
Um, so I think like that's like one big message that we really want to get across to females
Mhm.
is one of empowerment that, yes, these events, so we're really big on doing timelines. These events could have led you to where you are right now. And these could include events of the present, such as your sleep, such as your habits, such as the relationships that are around you. All of these things, our nutrition, can have all led us to where we are today,
Yeah.
but this isn't where we want to go. And that's why
Yeah.
our clients come to us, is they're like, hey, guess what? Today I woke up, or maybe I've been waking up for the last year and it has taken this message to hit me in the head every single day for
Yeah.
1 year, but today is the day I'm ready. So now I'm here before you and I want a different future. Or I heard this from somebody and I realized that, you know what, this isn't quite optimal, but this is
Yeah.
my normal and I don't think that this is where I want to go. And so taking our clients from there and empowering them with information, not that they necessarily want to act on that information, but at least they have the information to make, I want to say,
Educated
more,
decisions.
more educated decisions based
Yeah.
on their current circumstances. And
Yeah.
this also goes into that female who's going into that perimenopause transition. Present day, now this is present day 2025, um, aging is inevitable. Now,
Yeah.
if you're listening to this podcast 15 years in the future, I can't help you. But today, January 2025, aging is inevitable. It is not necessarily a bad thing. However, we don't want to be running towards the grave. And
Yeah.
so this is where we do have choices that we can make. And this is
Yeah.
where information and being able to make informed choices is really beneficial. And that's kind of like our stance. Now, to your question on the difference between, say, a Western medicine approach versus a functional medicine approach, I don't know that there's actually that much difference. I think it comes down to the provider, to the provider's education and that provider's experience, because everybody is going to have an information bias. And
Yeah.
again, it goes off of where did they go to school. You'll have providers that are the most amazing providers. I'm thinking of one in my life presently. He's an amazing provider, but he has a limitation. Now, where I think he excels beyond other providers is even though he is limited with regards to his experience and comfort level with, for example, hormone therapy,
Mhm.
I think he excels because he understands his limitation and he understands his willingness to perhaps dive into that realm and being an expert in that realm. So he communicates that to me. He says, hey, Mare, this is what I typically would do for females who are in menopause. However, I do know of these other providers that are more skilled, more experienced with regards to hormone therapy. So that for me absolutely takes him up another level because he's a
Sure.
willing to admit that.
Yeah.
Where I think the biggest difference is not necessarily Western medicine versus holistic, because I think that there's a lot of errors in both. Like, for
Sure.
example, with like functional health, we could probably go on the argument with saying that, somebody says, I'm going to come in and we need to support your liver. And the functional provider gives them a list of 30 supplements that their liver actually has to metabolize. Well, that's a little bit of a hard sell.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily any better than the Western medicine approach, where perhaps you also have a provider that's like, hey, I learned that estrogen is the spawn of Satan, and estrogen is going to kill you and it's going to cause cancer.
Yeah.
Well, that we definitely don't know. So I think it comes down to what we've learned. And as Sarah and I like to say, it's not so, or we've actually rephrased it. So let me just back up and say we've rephrased it. So
Sure.
instead of being, oh my gosh, scientific based, we can be led, right? We can be educational led. We can be science led because science is what we know, but by all means, we really hope that that continues to evolve. So I think like
Yeah.
unfortunately, it can't be divided Western versus functional health. There's really shitty people and shitty providers and shitty coaches that hold themselves grounded and rooted in
Right.
hard box. And there's
Yeah.
also the really fucking amazing providers that are really just limited. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No, you bring up some great points there. I think, when we think of a very broad description of Western healthcare, we think of symptom management, right? But to your point, when we look at a lot of functional medicine actions, it's symptom management. We've just replaced medications for supplements, and while that could be an argument of one's healthier or less leads to less adverse reactions, the idea is kind of the exact same. We're just treating symptoms and not actually, resolving any of the root. And I think that's where a lot of the arguments around protocols and stuff have taken form over the past year or two. But I think you brought up a great point too of like educating first and foremost. I think education is one of the best possible things that could continue to happen in terms of female healthcare. I think one of the main arguments that most people could agree to, whether they're on the Western side of the fence or functional, is that there's not enough good education around women's health. In just that flat statement right there.
Yeah, we all agree
So I
there.
think
Yeah.
giving women more education is that empowering notion that you mentioned. And I think it's a fragile situation to your point because we're you're essentially showing women that they can be in control of their health while at the same time not allowing them to blame themselves for their current predisposition because a lot of it's not their fault. It's what they were told or it's things unknown to them. We're running into a lot of these, I like to call them silent burdens or stealth infections. People who've had reactivated Epstein-Barr, people who had mold toxicity for the past 20 years that never got caught, people with Lyme disease that never got caught. And while at the time when that first interaction happened, it may not have led to this slew of symptoms, but now their stress bucket or toxic bucket, whatever you want to call it, has accumulated. And now they're having a ton of issues 5, 10, 15 years later in life. And of course, their daily actions have sprinkled gasoline onto that fire, but that's still not their fault. They
Right.
they they had no idea. And I think that's very important is to not put it in the sense of like you did everything wrong your entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something something that Sarah and I also are, we understand that, there we never want to like badmouth like the word providers as a whole because,
Yeah.
even we have both been around not great providers, and we've also been around some real big keeners. And I think that when it comes down to like, your example there, something that's always helped me is that um, one in these situations that I would hope that the providers that would or that were initiating care that they did the best they could and ran the essential tests that they could because I mean my gosh, if somebody comes in and says, hey, I have fatigue, where I seriously don't think it's appropriate to run, a $500 blood test panel, a food sensitivity panel, a GI map, a Dutch test, hair mineral tissue analysis, a mold tox, a heavy metal tox, like that is very overwhelming. And then you're going to come back and you're going to have all these tests with all these, I'm going to call them like errors on them. And that's going to be very overwhelming to a client. And so I
Totally.
think that, this is where that lovely word, that triage of care
Yeah.
comes in important and making sure we're handling the free shit, the free rocks, the ones that honestly move the needle. And those are the rocks that we really need to have in firm foundation regardless of any test that we come back. Like if you do a GI map, like again, the outcome of that is okay, well, what are we doing with our nutrition? What are we doing with our sleep before we add in, and it will take supplements because raspberries are not going to cure H. pylori.
Yeah.
Um, as much as I mean, they will help, and we can talk about polyphenols, but I mean, let's be real with our kids.
Right.
Um, but those foundations, are going to be really, really important. And this leads right into like, that topic of, perimenopause and that major transition that's happening for a female's life during this time, is, we all understand, or most of us understand the benefits with regards to hormone therapy. However, we have to have a healthy host. And does hormone therapy benefit and will that help create a healthy host? It absolutely will, but it also can add kerosene to a fire. So this is where Sarah and I, again, we kind of started that ground level, and I hate to say ground, more I should say foundational level, because it is the hardest level. It is so hard to build a great foundation, but that is where we start regardless. And like she gave that great example with regards to the mentee that she was working with. Like we have to make sure, hey, like are we handling these things? Are we looking after the basic things? And then really starting to branch out from there and then start making age-related correlations and how we can weave, things in and out to really help support this client.
No, I mean you just crushed it, Mayor. Thank you for that response. And that does kind of so I wanted to kind of chime in next about, where you guys feel bioidentical HRT kind of falls into this equation, and but also holistic supplementation. Going along the same point you made, is all of that moot if we're not addressing the low-hanging fruit and establishing that foundation for the body? Maybe not moot, but maybe you're not going to see optimal benefits.
Yeah, I think we have to just have those honest conversations with people about what they're willing and able to change.
Sure.
Um, because sometimes, and maybe this isn't a great example for this age group, but like if I'm talking to my new mom who, has a 6 month old and a 1.5 year old, like, am I gonna like hammer her every week about her sleep routine? Like, maybe I'm gonna have her like work to create a nice, environment before bed and as calm as possible. But we're not gonna like be like, oh, well, you didn't get 7 hours, why did you, get up and feed the baby? Like,
Sure.
like it doesn't make sense, right? So what is within the person's control? And then what are their expectations with any intervention? So Mayor used the example of polyphenols and raspberries for H. pylori. Like, is that gonna again, quote, fix or eradicate that overgrowth? Like probably very likely not. But having that conversation of like how this can benefit you in a different way, or like going off perimenopause, menopause, like I think that's a disservice that maybe the functional space does to women is, oh, here's some Vitex because, your progesterone is low. Well, okay, did you talk to her about why her progesterone is low in the
Right.
first place? Like, do we even understand that? And most women don't. Like, no one gave us this education. Like,
Right.
like, to your point about women's education as a whole needs to be better. So, like, having that conversation of like, okay, what is this really going to do for you? Like, what is the, evidence, say here? What is really going on? And maybe like there's other things that we could do and focus on that are going to pack a bigger punch downstream.
Yeah. Well, and I think a kind of opposite end of that spectrum that I can say from anecdotal experience, and I'm sure you both can too, is if you don't set up that foundation and don't, kind of check off those low-hanging fruit options, you could take all the supplements in the world, you could do the most invasive, vigorous protocol in the world. It might not work. We've
Yeah.
seen a lot of stubborn cases of GI issues. People come to us who've already worked with 5 specialists, but then you can just read through the lines that the stress is just there.
Yeah.
Yeah, or maybe it'll work initially, but eventually, I mean, the body's pretty smart, right?
Right,
And you got to
exactly.
work with it. Um, so I think that's just, really important. Or like thinking about like hormone therapy for someone with amenorrhea, maybe she's 30, 35, maybe she has this history of like competing, maybe she's had a history of birth control, maybe it's been like 10 years since she's had a period, since she's regularly ovulated, but she's also training 7 days a week. She's also eating 1,200 calories. She's also terrified to be over 15% body fat.
Yeah.
Ooh, like, do we ignore that and then, suggest progesterone and estrogen? Well, that's a conversation because we're talking about her health on both ends. We're talking about her mental health, but we're also talking about how long she has been sans estrogen, what she's doing on top of all of this, what her bone health might look like.
Sure,
So maybe
neurological
she
health.
isn't ready to address these things, but by God, do we just, let her go until she's 50 and cracks a bone or, cracks a hip and
Sure.
not bring up these options? So that's the conversations that like I think we need to be having. And
Yeah, of
again, we're coaches, we're not doctors, but
course.
what doctor is going to have that conversation with you unless they like Mayor said, like I've been in rooms with great doctors who call you out on your shit, but then I've
Yeah,
also been in rooms with doctors that are like kind of ignoring an elephant in the room.
sure. Well, and I think, to just hum a few lines about the system, I think it's very, I totally agree with both of you that we need to be very cautious to not put the emphasis on providers. It's more so on um, flaws in the system as a whole. When you think about a provider, so first and foremost, most of the med school is curriculum is written by big pharma. So the initial education has limitations. They've dedicated hundreds of thousands of dollars and several years of their life to this education. They get out, they get a job, and then they're basically incentivized to see as many patients as possible per day. Sometimes that's up to 100 patients a day. Sometimes I've worked with physicians who are also friends, and they've told me that they've seen 40 patients before 10 a.m. How could you dedicate proper time to each one of those patients if you're seeing that many per day? It's just not possible. And then if you're, you know, overworked and you're so in debt, that also hinders your ability to continue education and continue expanding your knowledge, expanding your skill set. They kind of, they being the system, it kind of sets you up to just put your head down and work and make your money, you know? And it takes a certain breed of physician to want to continue to explore more education and widen their horizons. I think another limitation is liability of legal ramifications of going against the mold, if you will. They're kind of safe if they do specific specific actions, whereas if they go against the mold, they may not be as protected. And I think insurance companies also handcuff providers sometimes. That's why we see so many limitations in their willingness to get comprehensive blood work or write certain medications because insurance says you should do this first before doing that, even though that might not be best for the patient. So I do want to really emphasize that the finger shouldn't be pointed so much at providers as much as improvements that could be made in the system, you know?
Agree.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
because like you said, even if a doctor, like I've had that unfortunate experience with my husband where it was like, oh, now we have this $500 bill because insurance didn't want to cover free T, 3 or whatever it is.
Totally.
So
Um, what are some negative ramifications to what are some possible negative ramifications to a woman who has kind of, fallen into society's normalizing of these symptoms, just kind of accepting that, age has led to these hormone decline. What can be some potential long-term risks of that hormone decline if left unaddressed for that woman?
well, I will say like age is going to be the cause of hormone decline. So like that is a thing. So that's going to happen. I think that with regards to what are some potentialities that could come with long-term with low hormones, we're looking at bone health. You are going to have compromised bone health. We're going to start seeing skewed lipids. We're going to start seeing overall aging is known as inflammaging. And I think that that word really is very comprehensive. So we're going to see a lot more inflammation in the body. And with that, we're going to see bone loss, muscle loss. This can impair our brain function, our heart function, our ability to utilize sugars and insulin in the proper way, but assimilation of vitamins and minerals. It's going to affect our digestive health with regards to stomach acid and how we're breaking down food into protein and thus far our muscle, our collagen, and everything else. I mean, females, I believe in, I think it's perimenopause or menopause, they start losing collagen at like 30%. Like, just to like show you with regards to like bone health, like a female that's gone under an oophorectomy, every year for the next, I think it's like 3 to 5 years post that, she's going to lose 5% of bone. So, I mean,
Wow.
that's pretty huge and that's pretty telling on
Yeah.
how hormones can affect the body. And
Yeah.
they're not isolation, right? It's not just about, sex drive,
Yeah.
although that's going to be it as well. Your anxiety, your sleep is going to suffer. Like, it's just going to kind of be round and round.
Yeah.
Does every female, is every female symptomatic? Well, I'd argue to say you don't feel bone loss, until you break a hip. Um, even other things that most people don't think of is, for example, like UTIs, with regards to um, elderly who get UTIs and actually becomes fatal. Like that's pretty huge actually, because
Yeah.
they just do not have the immune capacity to fight illness. And UTIs is ginormous. Like that's a huge thing in female health. But I think like the biggest thing is I think the messaging that I think should be is that we shouldn't have to wait till we're symptomatic. That's where you'll hear the notion of, with regards to hormone therapy, you'll hear the notion that so many years post menopause, it used to be like a date of like, a year of like 60 years of age. You shouldn't, or you shouldn't, don't need hormones. But it's not that, I think need was the wrong word. And they've now, come back and rephrased that. And they've just said that, basically as soon as you are able, which is in perimenopause, to start, supporting that hormonal health, because as you go on, as Sarah alluded to, having lower hormones, this is where that inflammation process starts. This is where your immune system starts changing. This is why, women who are going through the later stages of perimenopause and menopause, like immune system shifts are huge. Autoimmune is on the rise, right? This is again just the immune system and all the systems that are affected all in one with regards to hormones.
Hormones. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that really correlates with the concept that we hear often when talking about, hormone therapy and stuff is it's often referred to as like anti-aging, but it's not like they're turning back the number on your driver's license. They're improving your quality of life due to some of these things declining and potentially having the ability to prevent new symptoms or new health complications from emerging um, so quickly.
Yeah, there's a big difference between health span and lifespan. And I
Fair.
think like that's something that I've really
Great point.
been thinking about a lot lately, and with regards to like the whole anti-aging movement, which I don't think we have to get lost in like nomenclature or anything, but there is a huge difference between just, when someone says, being living versus being alive, right? And it comes down to like the quality of health. Like, I mean, we could get down into like the nuances of like, how your digestive health is affected by your hormones. But when it comes down to the end of the day, we have to think about that quality of life, that you're going to be living.
Yeah.
And there's no shame in that. And I
Yeah.
think that trips up a lot of women on, kind of that other side. Like this is a conversation I had with someone last week. She's like, explaining her history with using, testosterone, and she was like, but it was because I was feeling so bad and it helped my energy. I was like, girl, like, good. I'm glad you got, like, she was just so
Yeah.
afraid that she would be judged
Yeah.
for taking, something that does have, a stigma around it, that like, oh, you must just be taking this because you're vain, or, this and that. And that just kills me too, because I mean, yes, like not, there are clinics out there, and that's why like, having, you guys, Matt, having people that understand the health side of it is so important, but it is so, so much deeper than that. And I think that is, an interesting conversation of like if we could offer somebody estrogen therapy as opposed to a statin,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what maybe far-reaching effects does that have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now here's a different a little bit of a different question to prepare younger women who aren't there yet or not, let's say not even close. They're in their 30s. What can be some beneficial tips or advice you'd have for those women to maybe prevent early earlier symptoms, or I guess prolong their hormone health as long as possible and very smoothly transition into that age-related period?
Well, I'm 28. So this is my, definitely something I'm passionate about. And this is because of my history with amenorrhea, with birth control, with eating disorders, with competing.
Yeah,
Um, and I think, Mary, you had a post on this. It starts now. I mean,
right.
we're always aging, right? So the advice that I would give to, women like my age or younger or, older, any age is like, one, it's never too late to start working on this. And two, like your hormonal health, learning about it and supporting it as as soon as I think is so important in tracking your cycle and understanding are you ovulating or not, and starting to learn, ovulation is how you make these hormones in the first place, and being exposed to these hormones for as long as possible and having regular ovulatory cycles throughout your life, as long as possible, and doing all of the habits and, like Mayor said, foundations that are not always easy or basic to support that regular ovulatory cycle is so important. And if we do choose to do things like competing, hell yeah, like, bodybuilding, competing, or just competing at high level of sports that do expose your body to stress, right? Like we want to do these things like we talked about, in the beginning. How can we make sure and just really like put the boxing gloves on your body and really just put you, if you're going to go and do that and expose your body to a stress like that and inherent hormonal downregulation, what can we be doing, to make sure that maybe we mitigate, some of the risks, or we bounce back, for lack of a better term, as soon as possible and get your cycle back, regular. So like, let's just say bodybuilder competing, because I know it's a
Yeah.
lot of your audience. Like, okay, can we maybe not do the IIFYM, approach for your prep? Like, can we really pump the micronutrients? Can we make sure that your gut health's in a good spot,
Hmm.
before going into this prep? Can we prep in smarter ways? If we are going to use any exogenous substances, let's have those conversations and really understand what you're getting into.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we could go, I think, on and on that. But I think just the foundations are not easy and they're
Yeah.
so dang important, and understanding why they're so important and understanding that ovulation and reproduction, like whether or not you want a baby, your fertility is so important for your health. And then understanding what goes into creating an environment, being a host that is fertile and healthy. And if we think about like fitness, like evolutionary, biologically speaking, fitness, the fitness of a species is the ability to reproduce.
Hmm.
So, what are we
Good
doing
point.
to be as fit and healthy and strong as possible?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
I
was
think
gonna,
there's not nearly enough understanding around the idea of fertility and how much that plays into bodily health and function, whether we're talking about male or female. Fertility in 2025 is defined as having babies, but our body thinks of fertility in so many different ways in terms of hormone function, survival adaptations. Is this a safe environment to procreate? And that especially true with a woman's body. And I think so many women are focused on the idea of like, well, I don't want babies, so I don't care about a cycle or this and that, but they're not really realizing how much that lack of hormone health is playing into all their other symptoms that they may be experiencing or hindering their goals that they may be trying to accomplish. Um, So I think that that's all a great point. And I'm sure you guys fall into this a lot too, but talk to me a little bit about how you help women understand that it's not necessarily that we need to be zero stress. It's just that in the modern day, we need to kind of work on our balancing act, so to speak.
We're big on resilience.
Yeah.
We are very big on talking to our clients about, I think, Sarah's statement about putting our boxing gloves on. We are strong. We are strong women. We are strong humans. We can do hard things. However, we need to sometimes redefine what is hard. Just being exhausted or wearing a being busy as a badge of honor, that's not really where it's at. That's not showing us that we can actually be productive. And there's a big difference with that. When discussing with clients with boundaries, I know like I'm very direct on my intake call with a client. And there's one I'm thinking of in specific because I said, she asked me a question. I said, well, it's because I have boundaries. And I was like, and it's not about other people, it's about myself. I want to make sure I'm showing up to my best. And I was like, and that means that I have cutoff times. That means I have focus times. That means I say, no, not today or not next week. Sarah and I, we were asked, with regards to like our plans in 2025, and we have definitely an outline of a plan. However, there was a 3 month period where we were asked, like, what's the plan here? And we both were like, we're good. We're busy during that time. And our plan is to phase for Q2. And I think that was quite an empowering moment for both of us to be one, very fine with that our schedule is full and that we do not need to add on. We do not owe other people anything. And by thinking that we're constantly owing people more of us and more of our time, it's also sacrificing ourselves and who we are. And thus we are not walking the line. We are not walking the talk. We are not products of our product. And that's very important, not just from us as coaches, but also to like our clients. I heard somebody say something that was pretty profound with regards to parenting. And I want to be very clear, I am not a parent. But they said something to the effect of, I would die for my child. I would do this for my child. It's just like sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. And then they paused and they said, but would you live? Would you seek out mental health? Would you exercise? Would you ensure you fuel your body and nourish your body? Well, that means in order to do those things, you must have boundaries and you must value yourself. It doesn't mean that you do not value others. It's not a hierarchy. You don't have to put yourself higher and say, because I'm valuing me doesn't means I don't value you. That is not what it's saying at all. It means in order for me to honor you and hold space for you, I must have space to hold and I must have a footing to stand on. That to us is boundaries. That does not mean that we're shipping ourselves off to, a vacation spa and we write off our life. We don't need to escape the life that we've built. And that's something that I'm really proud for Sarah and I. Like we are strong women, we are business owners, we are wives, we are sisters, we are daughters, and we can do all of those things without sacrificing our soul and what we stand for. And that doesn't mean that we don't take time away. On the contrary, we ensure that we do, and it's very difficult for us, but we also know that that makes us resilient. And so that's something that we talk to our clients about is being strong. And it's not about, oh, we need to step back and we need you to sit on the couch and just be so weak and just, no, 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 like screw that shit. You're a strong woman. We need to act strong. Strong women have boundaries. And as soon as you put some confidence behind a female, holy shit, just like back off. Like there's nothing more powerful than a strong, confident female. Sorry, I mean, guys too, Matt.
Hey,
Well, and I think that's
I'm
why,
loving everything. I
yeah,
1000% agree.
when we're, different in the sense that we understand fitness, we understand strength and what you do in the gym, and we know how much of a catalyst that can be for everything that Mare is talking about. Like, there's nothing more empowering than getting, standing up at the bottom of a squat from a load that you thought that you wouldn't be able to handle, and being able to just say I did that. And like as a coach, like seeing like women have that experience, but then also seeing them have the experience of I told my boss no, or, I
Yeah.
set the boundary. And, Mary and I are very transparent with our clients and our mentees that, hey, we walk the walk, but that doesn't mean we don't trip and fall. We just, we have support systems and we call ourselves out on our bullshit and we dust it off and keep going. And I think that's the message that we want to send to women. And just we're big on mental health too and
Yeah.
referring out when appropriate because
Yeah.
that's such a big part of it.
Yeah.
And I think a part of our own journeys as well. And I think important to remember too, back to like the stress piece is like, it's not even necessarily the stress sometimes, it's how you respond to that stress. And
Totally.
that the magnitude of like how that stress affects you can be very, rooted in your response.
Yeah.
So how do we create like, a better response to whatever life is going to throw at us?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is things that people don't think about as stress management. It's
Totally.
training. It's having balanced meals so you're not riding this blood sugar roller coaster.
Sure.
It's sleeping. It's all of these things that, aren't as maybe sexy as a bubble bath and journaling, but they go along very well with it and
Yeah.
make that bubble bath a lot more effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like one other thing I'll just I'll say here with regards to like the perimenopause menopause crowd, I think that Sarah and I do a really good job of not putting them into one compartment because I think that this demographic, because it can be a female who's in her mid 30s all the way to we're dealing with somebody who's probably in menopause at 65, right? And their life experiences have been very different. And right now, I think we're in a really kind of interesting time with regards to clients because we are seeing a bit more of a shift. There was a time where I feel like the majority of women that were in that, I would say like midlife, it was we didn't talk about things. We didn't
Mhm.
talk about, our hormones were hush hush, our sex drive was hush hush, menopause, perimenopause, being symptomatic, everything was hush hush. And if you mentioned anything, then you were absolutely a whiner. And this is where a lot of pushback comes back overall. And this is where you'll see a lot of females that more equaled better as
Yeah.
opposed to better equals better. Just doing a workout to be exhausted meant that it was a good workout. And if you didn't go every day, that meant you weren't dedicated. It was just very on this paradigm of everything was extreme, like everything
Yeah.
was the extreme. And now we're starting to see this kind of really cool shift happen
Yeah.
where women are like, hey, like you know what? Like just because, like I mentioned, just because I say no to somebody
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I'm saying that I don't love them.
Right.
It doesn't mean that I don't appreciate them. It doesn't mean that I don't respect them. It's just that doesn't serve me right now. It doesn't serve my schedule.
Yeah.
Um, and now I know that like the clients that Sarah and I are working with, it's really cool because I've seen a shift. And just like this last year,
Yeah.
they want to be strong. They
Yeah.
want to do pull-ups. They want to do chin-ups. They, want to be strong females. And it's really cool when you open their eyes and say, hey, listen, in order to be strong, that means we, guess what, need to make sure that we're also recovering strong, right? And again, if it's a bubble bath, sure, but this is where they are opening up that they can have meals with their family. But again, it's about choices, right? It's
Yeah.
about making choice with those meals. If you're going to live strong, we need to fuel our body to be strong. It means taking a day off the gym. This is where looking at, your hormonal health, looking at your blood work and ensuring you are that optimal human being, wherever it means to you.
Right.
That's where those conversations are shifting. And I think it's a really cool time.
No, I agree. And again, I love everything you guys have said. And, by the way, it's not strictly women. Men are in the same boat of
Yeah.
needing to create much better boundaries. I feel like everyone as a whole in the past few generations, society has just put more and more demands on us, and we've kind of just like fallen face first into it and been in this like make it happen survival mode of like doing everything we're supposed to do as adults, but then also trying to find time to accomplish our personal goals. And then
Yeah.
everything together is far too overwhelming. And what most people end up needing is kind of a, for lack of a better word, reset or reprogramming of their thinking of like, how do I balance these things? And to your both of your points, some of that is saying no and putting the proper boundaries in place. And I can tell you from personal experience as a man, boundaries made a huge difference for my mental health and my physical health and actually made me a better coach, better businessman,
Yeah.
better life partner to my significant other, pretty much better in every way I could think of as a man. Learning how to set better boundaries and not just be stuck in this hamster wheel fight or flight.
Yeah, more it's the hustle. I think
Yeah.
it was you that we had a conversation about like what does it mean to be like a hustler? And that goes for like I don't, if you are no matter what you're doing in life, whether that's mom life is your life for 24 hours or dad life 24 hours a day, that hustler energy. I don't know, that definition got really, really, really skewed.
Yeah.
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 When I
And
think
boundaries,
it
I
turned
think,
into like the pain and suffering was part of like if I'm enduring these things, I'm on track. There
right.
was a correlation of like suffering and success. And we can see that in bodybuilding too, but we just see it in normal life.
Yeah,
Yeah. Being a wolf out there. No
Yeah. And
offense.
I think that's where the badge of honor concept comes in.
yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
hard. And I think, like, I mean, I've had to learn that, myself is like, what is your discipline? And boundaries are so huge, but boundaries with yourself, like,
Mm,
Yeah.
that's what it really I mean, boundaries, I don't know who says it, boundaries are for you. They're not really for the other person.
totally.
Um, and like, I mean, I know very true for me is I have to set boundaries more so for myself and against myself than I do, anything outside of me.
Yeah.
That's that's where I think that especially for like, when we're talking about like that perimenopause crowd, that's where I think that the whole concept of showing them by saying, hey, we walk this, and like you with your clients, Matt, we walk this walk. Because I've always said this, but they have gotten to the point, so many of them, because of how they were taught. We have to remember the generation that was their parents and was
Yes.
their grandparents. And, they were taught that in order to serve others, in order to be a good employee, in order to be a good wife, a good mother, it meant putting yourself on the back burner. And I've said it so many times, you probably heard me say it, Matt, like you put yourself on the back burner, but like these people, like they're like behind the stove at this point. They're crusting in the corner behind their stove, and the stove has not been pulled out to be cleaned in quite a long time.
Yeah.
Um, and reframing that for them just in baby steps is really important. And again, having those conversations that it's not being a victim by any means. If anything, saying, hey, this is where you are. Guess what? You have choices. And I think that's the reframe that we really are after, is not creating this victim identity that a lot of people will cling to. Like, that's not going to propel us forward.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, I think you guys are doing an awesome job in your space because even just in this conversation, it's not just providing education, but in your own lives, you're also setting an example and providing a path of like, you can be a successful business owner and wife and athlete and potentially mother, but it needs to be done in the proper strategizing and the proper format. Maybe not how so and so did it, especially a man, like it needs to be done customized to your life and your demands and your body. And I think you both have done an amazing job of figuring out that balance and but also staying centered in like I'm sure every now and then the emotional side comes in where it's like I want to do more And then it's like, nope, slow down. Like, you can't do that right now. You know what I mean? And that's very
Every
difficult
now
to
and
do for
then,
yourself.
Matt. Come on
Yeah,
now. Yeah.
just sometimes,
Sometimes, you know.
Well, we're very much,
hypothetically.
I mean, my favorite thing that I've been saying for years, and Mare and I always say it, is it's not even balance, it's like push and pull, right?
Yeah,
And like having that, I think is a helpful way for people to frame it. Because like you said, like the balance idea, it's like, holy shit, I'm supposed to do all of that. Like I
right.
think like you said, prioritizing and then
Yeah.
executing based off that. But yeah, it's I mean, it's all of us. It's men, women, all ages. It's we all got to get out of the matrix or whatever.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Well, guys, this has been an awesome conversation. I love chatting with you both. As I mentioned, I had some other topic discussions, but I think, there's so much information that we could go about. It's worth centering that to a whole different episode around, um, setting up a woman for an optimal pregnancy, setting up the child for an optimal birth and early stages of life. So I'd love to dedicate a whole nother time to that conversation, but I want to thank you both for today because I feel like this was extremely helpful. Um, and again, I admire you both for really, setting the example for strong, powerful women who also are healthy. That's kind of, the two pieces there. Um, I really want my followers to be able to follow and engage with both of you and continue to learn from you. So if you wouldn't mind sharing where they can contact you, where they can follow you, your social media, your emails, website, stuff of that nature. So in case they want more information, they can dive right in with both of you.
Yeah, so our Instagram account for Fortify is at Fortify underscore health underscore coaching. And our website is fortify-health.com. And I would say if you go to our website, plug in your email, we're going to send you a free foods to add for gut health guide. So download that. And then I'm going to be transparent that you need to be on our email list because we're pumping out blogs almost every single week about a lot of these topics to have that education. And then I think our Instagrams, our personal Instagrams are a good place to find that fire and um,
Definitely.
join in our energy. So I'm at Sarah Ford Bishop. Mare is at Mare dot
Yeah,
Pachi,
Mere
right?
dot
There's a dot.
Paci.
Is there a
Yeah,
Pachi? Or is there
yeah,
a dot?
yeah, at Mere dot Paci. And I
Okay.
want to reiterate what Sarah said. Like, we really are very big on wanting to provide as much information as we possibly can. So going to our website, there is so many blogs about specifically perimenopause, menopause, progestin,
Thyroid.
digestive
Yeah.
health, fertility, menstrual cycle, and there's also at least 8+ free PDF resources you can download. We did host 2 webinars last year that are now up for sale on our website. We have added 2 companion resources to both of those webinars. And stay tuned if you're on our newsletter list. Our newsletter hears about everything first before social media. And we will be hosting more webinars. And I'm going to say wink, wink on a topic, maybe wink, wink about perimenopause and maybe thyroid health, wink, wink. So definitely stay tuned. And please reach out if you have any questions.
That is so awesome. Thank you both for dedicating this time to chat and provide more knowledge. And thank you both for what you do on a day-to-day basis for the entire community. I really appreciate the time today. Love the conversation. Do either of you have any finishing thoughts?
I will do one more shameless plug, just because
Please.
we are huge about wanting to support the coaches in this community because we recognize that we are just 2 individuals, 2 mighty individuals, but 2 individuals nonetheless. We do have a group mentorship and we do host one-on-one mentorships, and it's something that we are incredibly passionate about. We have a really cool group of badass OG coaches in there that we really have some really great dialogues. And if that's something that anybody here is interested in, by all means, please reach out. It is an evergreen style program, so it's not as if you're missing out. You can jump in at any time, and we meet twice a month consistently. And we have some extra bonus stuff that we always add in.
Yeah, we want to
That
change
is
the
awesome.
narrative, not just for our clients, but we want to change the narrative in the coaching space.
Yeah. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much again for all you do and dedicating this time. To the viewers or followers of this, check out Mare and Sarah, check out Fortify Health. You're gonna be amazed with the information provided and follow along. We'll definitely have you both on again and we'll chat about some other great topics soon.
Thanks.